We are going to go ahead and dive in. I know a number of you in the room, but not everybody. So let me very quickly introduce myself and frame our conversation. My name is Alyssa Whitehead-Bust. I am super excited to get to facilitate the conversation with colleagues and friends about new schools in this very unique moment in time. I have a bunch of connections to this conversation. I have founded 2 schools. I used to oversee the team in Denver Public Schools that authorized, supported, and held accountable all charter and innovation schools. And I now run a national organization called Attuned, and we have gotten to help incubation work across the country in about a dozen states, including with Mia when she was in St. Louis. We had the opportunity to collaborate to stand up an incubator. I actually think Francis's opening plenary set up the context for this conversation incredibly well. This is a conversation about how might we do better for all kids, particularly those furthest from opportunity. How can we create trajectory-changing experiences for the young people who most need and deserve them? And New Schools has been part of that conversation. Opening new opportunities has been a strategy that in some cases has worked extraordinarily well, and in other cases has worked less well. And we're going to dive into that nuance in our conversation with folks who are doing the work right now in different contexts: district leader, authorizer, statewide supporter, and funder. And these folks will all introduce themselves momentarily. That's the why and the what. Here's the how of the conversation. We're each going to spend about 5 minutes sharing some context. I'm going to share context at the national level, and then they're each going to share context at their local level. While they're doing that, we're going to give you a QR code in case you have a clarifying question that must be answered. But then we're really wanting to leave half or more of this hour-long chunk to get into some of the nuanced conversation using your questions and some that we've pre-prepared. Before we dive in, will you just show us, we want to have a sense of who's in the room. How many of you, if any, are new school founders, either currently or aspirationally? Okay, a bunch. Wow, that's awesome. How many of you are school system leaders, superintendents, CEOs of a CMO? Okay, any authorizers in the room? Okay, nice. And then ed adjacents, philanthropists, support organizations. Okay, so we have a really good mix. Okay, I'm excited for that. That is fantastic. So we are going to dive in. So as many of you probably know, the creation of new schools has been a pretty significant part of the educational improvement and reform strategy for the past 3.5 decades. You'll see on the far left a graphic that comes from Carnegie. We're really grateful that Saskia helped tee up some of this research for us. It shows us the number of new schools that were created 1990 to 2000, 2000 to 2010, 2010 to 2020. You can see that there's still a significant number of new schools being created while that curve is coming down a little bit. But the accumulation of new schools now serves over 17 million children. About a third of our public school students are currently right now served in schools that have been opened in the past 35 years. Second piece of information on here that we thought was important to highlight is that these new schools have not only been meeting enrollment demand, they have been very specifically meeting the needs of kids of color. Kids of color currently are more densely populated in schools that have been opened within the past 35 years than in schools that are older than that. And then the final piece of information we thought was important was to highlight that increasingly over the past 3 decades, more and more charters have consumed the new school marketplace. This is important for a number of reasons, one of which is that nationally charter schools slightly outperform non-charter public schools. We saw that in Denver. When I was there, we opened about 100 schools. closed 35, and in that era of time, we were one of the fastest improving urban school districts in the nation, doubling our graduation rate and moving from the bottom quintile of the state to the 60th percentile. Charters also just have the autonomy, as you all know, to create new and innovative learning models. So interesting that charters have consumed a greater proportion of the new school pie. While all these new schools have been opening, however, we've seen a couple of different data points around enrollment, one of which is really notable, which is pre-pandemic, we were creeping up a little bit nationally in enrollment. Post-pandemic and moving forward, the population estimates suggest that we're going to see pretty precipitous drops in public school enrollment. This matters because we now have more schools than we need for the students that we're serving, and this trend is going to intensify over the next number of decades. At the same time, public will to close schools is weakening and weakening. You could imagine a world in which it's fine to have more schools than you need because, and this was actually true 20 years ago when I was opening a charter school, you sort of thought, oh, if I build it, they will come. If my school's better, kids are going to come here anyways, and then the district will have a choice to make about closure or not closure. As the market has become more constrained and we have not chosen to close schools, it puts more and more pressure on all organizations to thrive really early in their school trajectory. Charter schools right now are continuing to grow in enrollment. Not just share, but actual numbers of kids enrolling in charter schools. This is a sort of funky graph. Lydia made fun of me about it this morning because the scale is really, really wonky. Yeah, the scale is terrible. 100 here means basically status quo. Nothing is changing. Charters are growing modestly. You'll see them up at 115% of enrollment, meaning they're growing about 15%, and then you'll see that overall enrollment trends are decreasing. Add to the mix, too many schools, not enough kids exercising choice, not just in charters actually, but also, as we know, using ESA mechanisms, micro schools, home schools, etc. Add to that conversation the fact that we still haven't even recovered the learning loss we experienced during the pandemic. And we have a really significant conundrum on our hands. What do we know about new schools and their opportunity to create trajectory-changing opportunity for young people that we can apply to this exact moment in time? What might our strategy be moving forward? That's what we're going to explore together in this conversation. We're going to come back again and again to this set of essential questions. So as my colleagues are giving you an overview into their ecosystems, they're keeping in mind these questions of how might we continue to invest in creating access to trajectory-changing schools, and how might we prioritize those who have been most historically underserved, taking into consideration the specific constraints of this moment. Adrian is going to get us started. And Adrian operates in Aldine. You'll see Aldine here has experienced significant enrollment loss, even though Texas is one of the few states nationally that is seeing enrollment gain. And he's going to share with us how that's playing out for him. If you have questions while he's talking, here's your scan code. And Mia is my partner over here, tracking your questions as they come up.
All right, thank you all. And I guess I should say howdy, y'all, right? Because I'm from Texas. We don't talk like that. We really don't. But when we talk about an Aldine ISD, if you've ever flown into Houston, Texas, and if you've flown into Bush Airport, you've actually landed inside Aldine ISD. That is in our 111 square miles of district. It's a massive district. We have right now, we had 83 schools 5 years ago. Today we're going down to about 70 72 schools. When we talked about enrollment in 2015, Aldine had 70,000 students. Today, we have 56,000 students. So we have lost in 10 years 14,000 students. But to put it into more lens here is that in COVID, we had 67,000 students. So in 2020, 67,000. Today in 2025, we have 56,000. So we really had a big loss right after COVID. We also had a lot of life lessons happening from hurricanes that apartments have come offline, homes weren't rebuilt, so we've had a lot of urban sprawl happening inside of Houston as well. So we've lost about 20% enrollment in Aldine, and who we serve is we serve 75% Hispanic students, 23% African American. 92% of our students are considered economically disadvantaged. So to put that in context for you, 9 out of 10 students get free lunch in our district. So there's not one area of affluent communities in our boundaries. And so when we talk about enrollment loss for 20%, we're also experiencing low birth rates. In our communities, we have our numbers of kindergarten cohorts are declining. We get about 69% of our students that are from birth to kinder to enter into our district. So we're graduating more students today that are actually coming into the building. And now we're starting to see the effects. Over the last 4 years, our first grade, second graders have gotten smaller and smaller. So we know we have to make some changes in our system. So looking at our kindergarten enrollment, looking at no new home development, apartments coming offline, trailer parks not being rebuilt. Many years back, Hurricane Katrina happened. A lot of families moved from Louisiana to Houston, and we were recipients of a lot of those families. They have all grown up. They all have left as well. So that's some of the context we're looking at here. So on the next slide, it will show here is that when we talk about our 83 buildings in our district, they're just not efficient. They're half filled, half underutilized. So when we talk about our resources and what that looks like, there's a cost to it. We're paying double number of teachers. We don't have enough enrichment programs in all our buildings, art, music. So how do we have those experiences and create them across? We're paying 2 administrative teams. We're paying a double number of emergent bilinguals for our English language learners or SPED teachers. We don't have enough. We don't have enough teachers, certified teachers. So how do we combine the school leadership? How do we get our teachers to combine classrooms so that we'd have not use half empty buildings, but have full rooms to maximize our resources? So we want to increase the efficiency of our buildings. We want to maximize our resources, and we want to extend and offer more programming. But to do that, we have to close some buildings down. We have to utilize and repurpose our dollars to move it and move that process. So here on the next slide, you'll see that as we went through the process, we actually had to close. This was our second round of closing schools. Last year, we did close buildings. We started out with a list of about 16. It went down to 9. From 9, it went to 6. From 6, the Board of Trustees voted on 3. What that looked like is we had to be consistent in that process. So we used the same framework we did last school year to this school year. Facility utilization and condition, how often are our buildings being used, what's the number of enrollment versus students in there, financial data, like what's the cost to run a building and the programs in there. Are we paying a lot of dollars for specialized programs? Is our impact there or not? When we talk about family choice, it's not just our choice school programs or our magnet program, but families actually picking up, walking out of the district and going to other districts or moving out of the area. So we looked at the last 5 years data, and schools that have lost 20% enrollment were our targets. And then lastly, our outcome data is, does anybody watch the news in here? There's a lot of great things happening, sometimes or not. In Texas, we have not had accountability ratings in the last 3 years. Last month, the Texas courts actually finally allowed the state commissioner to provide the 2023 state assessments. We are in 2025 today. 2020, we didn't have anything COVID. 2021, it was a hold harmless year. We got results in 2022. And in 2023, there was a lawsuit in Texas. Everything was paused. 2024, there's another lawsuit. Those have not been released. So we hope next month when we have the 2025 results, they'll come out before 2024. So we have to create our own internal framework to do a school performance framework to rate our schools and we understand where we're standing. So this was our matrix to close and decide programming here. So what we envision is to repurpose our buildings, create new choices and families. We want to create private school experience, charter-like experiences within our buildings in our districts. Because we have so many buildings, we're able to repurpose them and create programs that families are asking for. One of the work we do is we're really big into empathy to hear what the families and communities are looking for, and then providing choices and opportunities for them to select what can come next in these buildings. So we wanted to decrease our choice families out, increase our families in. We want to have high achievement. And some of the work that we've done here is we've opened several new schools. La Promesa High School, we actually launched it 4 years ago. Super proud. It's a newcomer school with students 3 years or less. We put it inside a the high school was about 3/4 filled. Now it's full at capacity with the school within a school model. It's a top-rated school. When we got data, they were opened as a B campus, and now that the 23 results were released, it's actually an A-rated campus. So super excited about creating those opportunities. But most importantly, the first graduating class is happening in 2 weeks from that school. So super powerful about that work. We've also opened a new school for all girls. It's our top-rated middle school. When we're talking about top, they're at 95% pass of all the state assessments. Our next middle school is probably at 40%. So when we talk about achievement and what that looks like, it's amazing. We also did a boys' school, and the boys' school opened as a B-rated campus. So we see the power and impact. Again, it's all same students. We don't have a pocket where we're trying to get the best of the best. The students that are coming are the best in our district, so we're going to grow them no matter where they're coming from. So we're getting some great impact here. And so in the next slide, we'll show just that. Like, this is our framework. Every year we're going to go back. We're going to look at enrollment. We're going to look at utilization. We're going to look at the cost of it. We're going to look at our family choice. And then we're going to determine what actions can we take? What is our data telling us? Is there opportunity to consolidate buildings? Is there ways to create new programming? Is there ways to expand some of these campus redesign to bring in some PBL, blended learning, some type of niche schools? So how do we create these community schools moving forward? So this is our plan. This is our framework to decide what's next in our 73 campuses. One thing I'll point out is that we're at 53,000. You heard me say we've lost 14,000 students. Well, in the next 10 years, we're projected to lose another 10,000 students. So it's not a work that we just do it 1 year and say, okay, we're done, we close schools. 2 years ago, we closed 3. This past February, our board voted to close 6 additional schools. And next year, we're probably projecting to close another 5 schools. So it's a work that's continuous, but as we take away and close buildings in the community, it's one of the hardest things to do. But what can we bring back to the table to offer families as something new, something innovative, and something that'll help change the shape of the future of the schools? And my last plug here before I turn it over is that we just opened a new health science, education and learning building with one of the largest healthcare providers in the city of Houston. So we're creating these CTE pathways for 9th graders to earn industry-based certificates and high-demand wages for students who are Black, brown, and poverty to actually get healthcare. Our district is a healthcare desert, and now we're going to create a pipeline of future nurses, therapists, pharmacists in the facility. So super excited about that work.
Thank you, Adrian. All right, if folks need the scan code, it's there, and we're going to move to Missouri.
All right. Hi, Robbyn Wahby. I'm the executive director of the Missouri Charter Public School Commission. We're the statewide authorizer. I'm going to talk about St. Louis specifically. Our legislation has us landlocked into the 2 urbans for the most part for where charters are. And so in St. Louis, let me set the stage a little bit. In 1970, St. Louis had 115,000 children, and we are the largest district in the state and had been a real beacon for how urban education in America was organized. In 2000, when the first charter school opened in St. Louis, we had about 50,000 children in St. Louis. In 1970, there were 126 school buildings in this 60 square mile city. In 2000, there were 126 buildings in the same footprint. And so closing schools is hard for districts no matter what. And even something as compelling as losing more than half of your population. I think the other important sort of in your head idea is that St. Louis, we're a city without a county. So the county surrounds St. Louis, and there are 26 school districts outside of the city within 5 to 25-minute drive. And so there's no big wall. The border's porous, and so families can move between St. Louis and St. Louis County into those school districts. And so when charter schools came around, we were trying to figure out how do we really utilize charter schools to, as a city, be able to attract and retain families for all the reasons that school districts want to do that as well. What we found was a real struggle to get things started in St. Louis, but eventually through some help with major funders, there was seed capital and we were able to grow the charter market, and then it flattened. We're about 34% of the market in St. Louis, about 50% of the market in Kansas City. But the presence of an ed champion in St. Louis really was able to help us drive new school development, attract leaders of color, look at ways in which we could open schools in a very different way, engage community, as opposed to just planting a school, but really thinking about what the needs and wants and desires of parents and businesses and actually developers as well. Where can we begin to incent new housing? At the same time, the district continued to lose enrollment, and today they're at 19,000 students. We're at 12,000 students in the charter school sector. We've had a large, long time Catholic school, much like Philadelphia and other Rust Belt cities. You know what's happened with Catholic school enrollment at the same time. And so families do have choices. Families with means, I would say, have always had choices. And charter schools has really been a way for the city to be able to retain population. You saw those NAEP numbers, they're heartbreaking, and so we have not been able to break the seal on quality, or at least the retention of quality, but we do really have schools that are innovative and people are trying new things and want them. One of the best phone calls I ever got was from a family who lived in St. Louis County who was angry that they couldn't have access to a charter school in the city that they really wanted. And so that kind of family demand was important. You see here that you can see that the St. Louis Public Schools, which is it's a single district and it's contiguous with the boundaries of the city of St. Louis, continues to struggle financially, and they've closed schools based on that financial model. So the same resource constraints happen there. We, in partnership with the education champion that we have in St. Louis, have been driving this new school development. I guess the next slide will tell you a little bit about what kind of key elements we see moving forward. How do we continue to do this when we have a demographic winter in Missouri totally, and in St. Louis pretty severely? And so we are losing 100 black families a month in the city of St. Louis over the last 2 years, and that we don't see a trend changing. And so for the families that many of us come to work every day to serve, how are we going to make sure that there's high quality, equitable access to quality public schools when they're leaving a market that actually has choice? And so one of the things that we've done is we've worked with our mayor to sort of champion the reason that we need to have new school development. Quality is a magnet, and people will move to the community when there is proven models. Another really important part of this is thinking differently about that community engagement work and looking at making sure that we're meeting the needs of the community in the community, and not just planting schools, and not just saying that we've got an itch for this kind of a school. That has resulted in really tremendous growth of enrollment in an elementary school that we're now ready to replicate. And so we've done grade expansions, and this will be our first real replication. We've opened a career and tech high school, and they actually opened with more students in the first year than they expected. And so as we're struggling to see enrollment in other places, when you really meet the needs of families, and in this case, I think most of you are probably feeling the same thing, high schools are really the moneymaker at this point. And then I think the struggle about closure continues. If any of you have ever been through a closure, you know it's no fun. As the district tries to grapple with, I think they're at 72 buildings today. How are we going to repurpose those, that physical plant? Charters would like to be part of that. That has not really been the kind of partnership we see in St. Louis. And so there's been a call for stopping charter schools until the district is right-sized. So I'll remind folks, as I do in St. Louis when I talk to them about that, we have had 100% of the needed seats in the city of St. Louis forever. Not one child has ever not been able to find a school. Our work has to be on quality and not the numbers. It can't ignore the finance, but it is, we'll never really be able to serve our children if we don't find new and interesting models that families want and that the community needs. We're just not going to be able to wait this out.
Thank you, Robbyn.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lydia Hoffman. I'm humbled to be up here because I feel like half of you could be leading this panel. So it's fun to be in the room with you all, and I'm looking forward to the questions. I lead a relatively new organization called the Colorado Schools Fund, and we support new public charter schools and other innovative public schools that are emerging from authentic community need across the whole state of Colorado. So my lens in this conversation is a little bit different. But I think about this work, like Robbyn was sharing, from a perspective of opportunity. And I just wanted to share two quick stories of conversations that I've had over the past year. So as I was learning more about Colorado, I spent the year driving around the state and spending time in communities. And in one of our mountain communities in Colorado, I was with a recent high school grad, a Latina, and she told me that her high school guidance counselor, she was undocumented, told her, "Why would you even apply to college? It's not like you're going to get a job afterwards." And that's not the only time I heard that. And I'm thinking, this is 2025 in our schools, and this is the set of expectations we have for our young people. A few weeks later, I was in Aurora, which is just east of Denver, and I was at our largest medical campus in Colorado, the Anschutz Medical Campus, with a group of high school students from Aurora Science and Tech, which is a DSST high school. And I met a student there. She's first-gen Latina, and she spent 13 days, she was a junior, the prior year on campus at this medical campus, shadowing different folks. And she said to me, "When I started high school, I thought there was just a nurse and a doctor, and now I understand every single job on this campus." And she said, "I am going to become an MD PhD," and then proceeded to tell me the exact cancer research she was going to be doing. She said, "But I'm social, so I'm still going to do some, clinical work and see patients." And she had had multiple internships over the summer on this campus that her high school counselor helped arrange. And I just think about that when I reflect on this conversation around new schools, because what we're really talking about is access to opportunity, and how can we create more of that for our young people. So just a quick context on Colorado. I've started calling this like the Colorado way on public education because it's a strange state and we don't really fit in a lot of boxes. First of all, there's complete public school choice in Colorado. So what you're describing, Robbyn, in Missouri doesn't happen because any child in Colorado can enroll in any school across the state. We also have about 1 in 6 of our K-12 students are in public charter schools. So we have 135,000 charter school students across the state in every corner of the state. And then we have a set of Democratic political leaders who are just pragmatic, is how I would describe them, just a little refreshing, and student-centered, and willing to take political risk to stand up for what they see as creating more pathways of opportunity for students. So our governor founded charter schools before he entered politics. We have 2 U.S. senators who are supportive of more public school choice, and our Senate president has been an unbelievable champion. So it's a special place from a leadership perspective. I see Zach McCumsey in the audience here, who just launched a new school incubation and fellowship program called the Legacy Fellowship last year. So there's just energy around what more can we be doing statewide in Colorado. In terms of this conversation on declining enrollment, so we are declining. We're sort of like middle of the pack nationally in terms of enrollment declines. I describe it as our enrollment is shifting. So a Latino family who might have moved to Denver 10 years ago is no longer moving to Denver, maybe moving to D49 in Colorado Springs or a suburb north of Denver. And so we're trying to think about where is the need shifted for high quality schools. And then the other thing is, like, we just continue to be driven by the fact that we don't have enough high quality schools, period. And you can see that in the massive opportunity gaps we have statewide. If you are a multilingual learner in Colorado, if you're in elementary school, only 1 in 10 of our multilingual learners are on grade level. In high school, it's 2 or 3%. And so that is what gets me up every day. And it's a screaming need. We can go to the next slide. I just wanted to share a little bit more context on our charter sector. So these are just pictures from driving around Colorado the last year. On the left is a dual language school in Greeley, which is a meatpacking town north of, about an hour north of Denver, a beautiful dual language Spanish-English school. This, you probably can't see it, but there's students were working on a project around the Colorado Gold Rush, but in Spanish. The second is, you can barely see it, there's a tiny charter school in the southeastern corner of the state and adjacent to literally a field, 130 student, sustainable, beautiful school. The third is a language immersion school in Fort Collins, and the last one in Durango, a carbon neutral school in one of our mountain communities. That's really cool. You can go to the next slide, Alyssa. But that just represents the diversity of the public school choice sector in Colorado. And then for this conversation, so our organization, we're providing grants and support to expand great schools across the state. And so how do we think about opportunities in this unique moment? The first is we are just crazy about data and then pairing that with having conversations in communities to understand where the need is. And I just put this snapshot on the screen. There's a tiny town in southern Colorado called Trinidad. 40% of students there leave that district every day to go to school in other districts. And because we have total public school choice, we can see that data. And I met a family, their children go to school 50 miles away every single day to access a high quality option. So we were trying to think, what could we do to support this community? Since then, actually, they now have a new superintendent who's incredibly strong. And so now we're shifted and saying, what can we do to support you to try to have families come home? But the second is growth. So this is an area of such an opportunity for collaboration, obviously, across districts and public charter schools and housing developers. We have a community in Eastern Aurora that's adding 12,000 houses right now. And so the school district's partnering with DSST to co-locate a new campus out there. But that's another area we're looking at. And then the third is family demand. And this is so obvious, but we've just spent a ton of time visiting all the top schools and understanding, like, do you have more demand than you can accommodate, and what can we do to support you in that? And so I just wouldn't underestimate spending time looking like where are families already choosing and what can we do to expand access to those incredibly high quality schools. I'll stop there.
All right, I think we did it. We left almost half of our time for juicier conversation. So we have a couple of questions just to get us started. While our panelists choose one of these three questions, we're going to encourage you also to enter any remaining questions that you have. Mia's over here organizing them, and then she's going to curate some of the juiciest, most nuanced questions that we will then layer on with these. So for our panelists, how might we have fewer but better schools? Love the focus on quality we've already heard. How might we continue to invest in creating trajectory-changing schools for all students, but particularly those, to Robbyn's point, that I think most of us get out of bed to come to work for every day? And then what continues to excite you or worry you about the New Schools movement? You're choosing one, and Robbyn, we'll start with you this time, and then you can tag it in whichever direction you choose.
Well, I'll take the easiest question, which is the first one. We close poor quality schools, and that is, it's really hard to do. How many people have been involved in a school closure? No. So how many want to do it again? Right. Yeah. But it is really, I mean, like we're disrupting families and educators' lives. But there's nothing more disruptive than that student spending time in a school and not being able to reach their full potential, and years of poverty and multiple generations of lack of opportunity, and not realizing their full citizenship of this country, the ability to self-actualize. And so if we're committed to that big outcome, it means that we have to do the hard stuff, and closing failing schools is it. I also we have our open sign out, and we really are interested in seeing new ideas. And we think about it in two ways. There are foundational schools. Folks want to do a really decent proven method and they want to do it in a location, or they themselves believe that their community approach will be better, I'm up for that. But I'm also up for interesting and new ideas, and we're willing to take a bet with capacity and with a good plan.
All right, I can go next here. I'll take the second question. Really passionate about creating those opportunities for students in our district. As you heard me mention, we just opened a health high school for our students in Health Desert. In 111 square miles of Aldine across Houston, our families have to leave our boundaries to get health care. So when we had an opportunity to open up this new school model, understanding we can actually cultivate students. And if you do not know this, in 10 years, there's going to be about 1.9 million job vacancies in healthcare. I don't know about you all, but I want someone to take care of me, a nurse, a doctor, a therapist, if I need it, right? So we can cultivate the talent to these organizations who need it, and then we're going to create an opportunity for families and students to learn that, yes, you can get healthcare, yes, it's safe to do so, and you can have someone who looks, sounds, and speaks just like you to service you, and that's some power behind it. So that's one of those big reasons we're doing this work. You heard me talk about La Promesa, our newcomer school. Really, the students, when we built out the niche for that career technology program, the students advocated to put a teacher pathway so they can become bilingual teachers, so they can come back and serve students just like them. That's power behind that work. We opened a P-Tech school at one of our high schools that we were redesigning the engineering pathway. And when you talk about going down to 4th, 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th graders, pulling the job market trends for the next 5, 10, 15 years in Houston, the Gulf Coast region, and understanding what are the job trajectories. We don't want to saturate the market. So when we tell students, this is Megatronics, this is the earnings, this is what the job feels like. We've been doing Megatronics now for 4 years. I still can't clearly communicate what it is, but if you ask the students, they can definitely tell you what it is and what their interest is. So the programs that we're building are the demands of the students and the community. Super powerful in that work. And as we look what's next, we have a great aviation program that we're working with United Airlines. So creating pilots, people who work on planes, earning their unmanned, like I was excited to get a driver's license at 16. These students are getting unmanned pilot license to fly drones. Now, and if you look at the job market, you can start a salary at $70,000 to fly drones. And we talk about hurricanes in our community and damages. If you have an insurance adjuster to come out to see your home and, well, there's damage, there's flooding, they might not get to you for months, but now with the technology, our students can actually go out there and survey and land multiple areas in one day, and people can get their lives back on track. So that's a really powerful action. So as we create these new school models, understanding that, yes, you're going to close schools, but how can you create a better experience to the community and create more access for students to leap forward for themselves or families and change their life trajectory? So super powerful work that we're doing. And it doesn't stop here. Like, we have a new school, and then they'll be like, what do you have next? I'm like, well, I don't want to tell you just yet because I don't want to scare you all. Because you can do so much at one time in a large system, but we're always forward thinking to see what's the next new option that we can come out here.
I love what you're sharing. I'm like, I need to come visit soon. I was just going to say, I feel like in today's environment, we just need to get more creative and think of more third way options and pathways. And so we're trying to figure out, too, across Colorado, how can we collaborate and where is there opportunity to think differently? So we're supporting another rural charter school that's exploring with their local community college, opening up a pre-K and a preschool using their facility, but the charter would operate it. And I think there are so many opportunities for this type of collaboration with sort of mission-aligned systems who are able to offer space, which is obviously a huge constraint for growth. We're also, in other, by the way, I would just say our rural communities are so collaborative. So if anyone is struggling on that front, go spend time in a rural community, because there's no other option but to actually partner and to think creatively. So anyway, that's one of the main things that we're thinking a lot about. We're also, again, trying to think, how can we help partner to solve the challenge that district or community might be facing? So I have a superintendent who said, can you help us find a dual language model? Because we just haven't been able to do that well within our district. And so we're interested in open to partnering with a public charter school on that. And I think that's the kind of thinking that's going to get us through this period of time. Yeah.
All right, tell us what is on our participants' minds. Do you have some good juicy questions?
Yes, I do. First, I'll say thank you for using the upvote feature because it made it very easy. I know where the most energy is around these questions. So one question is just thinking about the conditions, specifically incentives. So how do we shift the incentive structure for school founders away from scale, seat capture, and towards deepening impact and strengthening support for a truly great, if small, school?
Yes. You want me to repeat it?
Yes. Did you hear me?
I did. I might not repeat it word for word, but I think I got the gist. The question relates to creating the right incentive structures to emphasize quality over seat capture so that we might be able to create excellent, innovative, if not small, schools.
So one of the pain points for small schools, obviously, is in being able to afford all the amenities or even basically keeping the lights on, right? And so what we're looking at is how we can work with our Ed Champion office to create more opportunities to partner on the back end. I think often that we think about the innovation being in the classroom and curriculum, and that's cool and exciting. But I think some of the best work charter schools have done too is in the back side of it and how they can collaborate on purchase power and organizational structures, even co-locate in facilities. And so finding ways in which there are barriers and then being able to work together in a community to create, to reduce that friction for that work. We're also looking at, we encourage our schools to be open to others to visit. Maybe you don't want to open up your model again, but that model's worth seeing in other places in our community. And then just sort of being a broker of partners and saying, come and look at this school, advocate for them to spend and partner. There's often some resources to provide sort of principal in residence so that someone can really understand and learn that model and then take it and open another small school, but independent in another location.
I have a quick, very simple answer to this, which is those of us who fund schools should just be funding those, especially if you're working in a regional, smaller context, because there's no way in which scale can be your only North Star. I'm saying this as someone who spent 12 years working at the Charter School Growth Fund, but we're now supporting a 30-student micro school that's opening in a mountain community in Colorado next fall, and we're working with an amazing entrepreneur in the San Luis Valley on a series of micro schools that are all focused on Latino heritage. And there's no way those schools would ever be 500-student schools. They don't make any sense to be in a school district that's 132 students. But anyway, I just think we need to be funding more of that work.
I'm going to take my facilitator hat off and put on my practitioner hat. Two other things occur to me that respond to this question. One is philanthropy driving community engagement. So we know we're opening schools that our families and students most want. The idea of co-designing new schools is still, in my mind, too rare nationally. That's number one. And number two is there's no incentive for systems to close schools well and humanely, yet we know there are better and worse ways of doing it. Adrian talked a little bit about co-designing new options. There are also models where you set up your enrollment system to make sure students impacted by closure have priority access to the highest quality seats closest to their homes. Those kinds of systems don't exist in most districts and really matter and take resources to build and then execute on well. What's our next question?
Yes. So we've been talking about interventions like school closure, but before even going to something that invasive, Enrollment, like student attendance, is largely a parental decision. So how do you think about enhancing the parent experience to reduce the risk they walk out the door?
So when we talk about getting our parents engaged, and especially in our community, it's tough. When we closed schools, 6 schools this time, we had 0 public comment from the community. You look at the news, the lines are out the door, don't close our schools. So to engage our parents, how do we get them in there? So some of the things we've been thinking about and we've done in one of our schools is we partner with a food bank. And so with that food bank, students get to take home food, like real food, real protein, real vegetables. And part of that work is like, you got to send your kids to school. They got to come to access this work. And so when we talk about parent engagement, one of the things we've done is we've opened courses to our families in the district. We have a family community engagement team. Actually tonight is the graduation for our parents, where they actually unlock access to like English language courses or earning their GEDs, college access courses. They're actually taking classes in reading and math to help their students in engagement. So last year we had over 500 parents graduate from it. Every year the number is growing. So what we try to do is interact them and get them into our system, because we've seen those parents who are involved, the student achievement is growing, the attendance increases, and the best walking billboards are your parents and your students. So the more they know about the district, the better your attendance will be, the better your enrollment can be, and it will help you save work in there. So our whole arm approach to wraparound services for parents and students are included in just that. But how do we replicate and create other tools in the system? One thing I've been trying to do and talk with the team is like, how do we bring in the washer and dryer laundromat system into our buildings to unlock students that come to the buildings? How can we bring some of the trauma experiences or getting some professional counselors in the building to work with students for trauma needs on the issues they're facing and the parents? So one of the big things too is the immigration in our buildings. I'll tell you that the day of the election, that Monday when it was don't go to school work day, I will tell you in our district, we had our attendance for the day was 68%. In the district our size, we had about 16,000 students absent in one day. 16,000 in one day. The impact, even just for funding. So we have to think about, how do we engage our parents in the systems? How do we get them to help drive attendance? How do we draw that work? So we have been creative to bring in these additional resources to support families across the district. We have strategically partnered and asked parents, what are they looking for and what do they need? And so understanding that every community needs something different, but there's tools and resources that we can replicate and then make our own. So that's one of the strategies we're looking at. And every year in this family engagement program we do for students and parents, we offer over 100 classes to parents, and you'll be surprised how many parents have done not just one course. They take about 8 to 10 classes in 1 year just to better understand what their students and experience looks like in the buildings.
Either of you want to add anything?
Maybe just 2 quick things. One, I've been surprised just in conversations with families, how dissatisfied so many families are with their existing set of choices. And when you ask more, it's very basic things like communication, ability to actually understand how my child's doing, safety, bullying. And so I think sometimes we get a little too cute around how we're thinking about what's needed when really basic needs aren't being met today. And then the second thing I was going to say, just looking at enrollment data and sort of which schools are like really full in this era of declining enrollment. I was in a part of Colorado where enrollment's declining at a school that had 1,200 families on their wait list. And I was like, what is happening here? And we're really seeing in language immersion schools sort of unique models that are fundamentally high quality. So in those models that aren't high quality, we're not seeing families choose. But in unique models that are really responding to family and community needs that are high quality, enrollment is staying incredibly steady or increasing.
Colorado is a context where you can still find public accountability data on quality, which is a challenge in many of your states. And so I think one of the other things that could be done is to have alternative ways through our ed champs and our philanthropists to publish that data.
I did want to bring up the sort of accountability side of it too. And I think sometimes you can be a voice for parents without, being really loud about it or engaging them personally. But we do focus groups at all of our site visit. We try to hear what families are saying about the quality of the school. So we're getting in tune with that. We look at demand, and if there is demand and mobility, and we're looking at why kids are leaving and what percentage, we make that part of the accountability and reporting system. We really want to ask the board and the management what they're doing to address that. And when there is large waiting lists, we want the school to know that we are interested in them addressing that and encourage them to think about another campus, another grade, or find ways in which they can do something to expand in the quality that they're doing, to share it with others, that they could increase the quality in other schools.
If I could also put on my practitioner hat for just 10 seconds, I really want to underline something that came through in every one of your remarks to this last question, which is this idea of radical transparency. And I actually think it starts at the school level. A lot of times we'll focus on report card structures and radical transparency about your child. When you put yourself on the hook as a school leader to report on school-wide outcomes to your parent community, it shifts how you behave. And so I think while we also want to meet the needs of wraparound, and a lot of that can happen through partnerships, like Adrian mentioned, what can we be doing in the core of our work to equip parents with the data they need to make informed choices? That is how you lead with integrity. But which brings me to the next question that was asked, which gets back to the theme of this conference, which is courage to lead and commitment to deliver. And so there's a question of courageous leaders who close underperforming schools are often scapegoated and don't persist in their roles. How do we create the conditions for leaders to make hard decisions like that without retribution?
Well, I actually have a test case going on right now in St. Louis. For campus, all four campuses are K-8. A leader came up through the ranks to become the executive director of the four campuses, and she really could see that one of them was constantly struggling. Both leadership, the services being provided, and the overall academic performance. And over a couple of years of having some really difficult conversations with her about what is needed for that community as a better option than what they're providing, she and the board made a decision to close their own school. So before we had to do something, this leader was courageous about it. And she spent a lot of time in her buildings, not dissimilar to the results that you've seen. We can't be afraid to talk to people. I think where the upset comes in is that you didn't tell them, or that you were, frankly, they can see the fear in your eyes. So go ahead and tell them what's really going on. And they understand. They want what's better for their children too.
I can add to that.
Adrian, you want to add?
And so when we talk about courageous, bold leaders, our boys' school, we opened that school 3 years ago. Our enrollment didn't hit, so when we talk about funding schools and do we hit our enrollment, do we keep it open? And as we're going through closing the school process, we heard it and say, well, you're looking at all this data and all these numbers, well, what about the new school you just opened? Although it's performing well, it's not hitting your thresholds that you have up here. But being able to be courageous to tell the story about the impact that we're having in the partnership with the students, with the young men, the young boys, that it's creating, and saying, well, we need to give it time to build out this system. We need to give the right accessibility, the autonomy to build the programs, because we've invested so much time, energy, and dollars into the students that we need to grow it. But when they say, well, you're closing 6 schools that are about 500 kids, and this school has about 180, why is that one staying open? So having those bold, courageous conversations with the district leaders, board members, and the community to say, but look at the data, look at the impact. Although it's a small number, you're changing trajectory of the lives of the students. But being creative, we also have to be realistic to tell the leader, we need to put some conditions in place to ensure we're increasing enrollment. And proud to say, and Gabby is on our team, and we were looking at the numbers yesterday, because every week I get the question, where are we at with the school? Where are we at with the numbers? So you heard me say there's 180 students yesterday. We're proud to say that the numbers for next year have already doubled to 173, so it's already over 350. But wait, there's more. There's 90 other students who have yet to accept their seat for next year. So we've been able to have those courageous conversations. We had to say, like, you know what, we're not going to close the school, but we can put it into another building that's half empty and still create it. So just being courageous to say, okay, we're going to keep the school model, we're going to keep moving it, we just have to move the location. But now that we have a new leader and some new grounding and having those conversations like, hey, if this doesn't work, these are the options that's going to happen, we're now able to drive in. We've just doubled enrollment and really like in 3 months that we've had a contraction effort in it. So super excited about those courageous conversations that, yes, it could close or you may move, or we just may need to go in a whole nother direction. So setting boundaries is key right up front.
All right, I think we have time for the juiciest question that remains, and we're just going to punt it to one person up here.
Great. I think it's a question that will help us leave this room in better alignment about what this work takes. So how do you define a quality school? What should mark a school for failure or closure? Is it as simple as achievement?
I'm going to give this one to Lydia, because after a dozen years at the Growth Fund, choosing schools to invest in, she's thought about this a ton.
I can speak to the quality, but I'm unqualified to talk about the closure piece. On school quality, so yes, we do look at student achievement data, and we're crazy about that because that's ultimately our bar and understanding of whether students are learning. But we think about it, one, from a student growth perspective most of all, so understanding, and I always think every adult's job in a building is to make sure every child is growing no matter where they're coming into the building at. So we look at student achievement data, but we also, and we're in a funder seat, so we don't have to have a perfect framework that, you know, everything adds to 100 or 90. We're able to actually spend time in schools. And when you can spend time in schools, you understand what is the culture of this school, are students learning, what is the relationship like between students and adults, and you really can understand the student experience that's occurring too. So that's a critical component for us. And we look at data around who's leaving the school, who's staying, and what do families think about the school as well. And then we obviously also care about long-term student outcomes, which looks different depending on if we're looking at a high school versus obviously an elementary school. But we're in a little bit of a privileged seat because we really can say that we're looking holistically and have the opportunity to do that.
So we created a list of things that we feel collectively across our experience have popped as lessons learned, and we just wanted to leave with these couple of bullet points of things we hope will carry us into the future we want to create. Aligning across the sector, funding down to classroom practice, really prioritizing quality grounded in data, both when you're opening and closing schools. Thinking about the humanity of this work, the adaptive component. These are human beings, our students and families, making sure they're really engaged. Our families and students need to have voice at the table in all of these decisions, and then really thinking about your talent to make sure that the pipeline exists to do better on behalf of kids moving forward. Thanks for joining us post-lunch. Have a good rest of your afternoon.